With gaming being popular ever since the early 1980s, we've had our fair share of amazing games, then of course there's been some absolutely garbage games. But over the years, we have seen some of the most defining games of the generation. Games that make you rethink your life and should be displayed in an art museum. Games that when you beat them, you go into a depression because of how good they were. I played a fair share of games that I think are 10 out of 10s, and I'll be sharing them in this video. Some of them I'm sure you'll expect, but there might be some games on this list you didn't expect to be on here. So make sure to watch all the way through, but before we get into the video, make sure to subscribe if you hate stepping on Legos. I upload good gaming content for you guys, I hope so. But with all that being said, let's get right into the games that I think are 10 out of 10s. PS, there will most likely be spoilers, so be prepared for that. We're starting off strong at the beginning with God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnorak. Okay, before I go into depth about these games, I just want to let y'all know I started playing God of War 2018 the month God of War Ragnorak came out, so I was very late to the bandwagon, but I didn't own a PlayStation 4, which is one of the main reasons why. But once I got the PS5 and learned which games to play, God of War 2018 was the very first game I had my eye on, especially since it came out with PlayStation Plus for free. But guys, whenever I tell you when I first played this game, it was love at first sight. I find myself being so invested into the story and invested in the relationship between Atreus and Kratos, and I did not mean it like that. But I remember how astonished I was whenever the first Baldur fight happened, and the scenes that led up to it. I never felt so pumped playing a game before. But fast forward to when I beat God of War 2018, I had already had God of War Ragnarok because it was gifted to me for Christmas. But whenever I first played it and went through the first Thor fight scene, I already knew Ragnarok was going to be a fine dining experience. And boy was I right, this whole game was just a treat. Except some of the parts where you play as Atreus. But other than that, the characters introduced in this game were amazing. Odin was a great villain in my opinion. And I love the twist where he found out to be Tyr the whole time. But by far the best part of the game was the ending in my opinion. When Kratos opened up the mural and it showed his timeline basically. And at the far right of the mural it showed how the people looked up to him. Something that he never thought would have happened. And it's just a very heartwarming part of the game. Especially with all the crap that Odin was giving him about how no one ever looked up to him and stuff like that. But I could just go on and on with the God of War games. If you haven't played them already, go ahead and try to find a way. Next up we have Mario Wonder. This game was such a breath of fresh air after all the 2D Mario garbage we were getting for the longest time. But Nintendo finally decided to lock in and change things up and ended up making this masterpiece of a game. From the music to the animation to the smooth gameplay, there's just so much I love about Mario Wonder. The badges that were introduced was such a fun concept that I hope is utilized more in the future as well. Also, all the new characters and enemies that were introduced were amazing. The Wonder Seeds made playing each level feel so exciting. I would always find myself wanting to find them all so I could play through them all. The only real complaint I have is the lack of bosses. I really enjoyed the Bowser Jr. battles though. I wish they had more diversity because it felt like it would have been a lot better with that. But that doesn't affect really how much I love this game. I played through it twice already since it came out last year and plan on replaying it more in the future and even with my family and friends. Ocarina of Time has aged like fine wine. The more I think about this game, the more amazed I get from it. Whenever you think that this was the first 3D Zelda game and even one of the first 3D games ever made. And for it to be as good as it is might be the most insane thing about it. Saying this game is art is an understatement. Ocarina of Time should define what it is to make a great game. But Ocarina of Time is probably going to be the most influential game on this list since a lot of the elements that were introduced in this game are in a lot of the newer adventure slash action slash open world games we see today. This game also has arguably the best soundtrack ever made for a video game. There's some absolute bangers in this game like Gerudo Valley, the main theme song, and the Lost Woods theme, and many more. The only flaw I can maybe think of for Ocarina of Time are the bosses, but even then that's a stretch. The story is also just amazing. I think it's so cool being able to go to the future and the past during this game. If Ocarina of Time was never made, who knows where this genre of games would be today without it. Next up are two of my favorite games of all time, being both the Mario Galaxy games. When you play these games, you get so immersed in the atmosphere Mario Galaxy brings, and the music plays a big part of what makes it so immersive. From Space Junk Galaxy, the Beach Bowl Galaxy, and Egg Planet, the Galaxy theme music is so beautiful and makes playing the level so relaxing when going through all the obstacles. But the idea of Mario Galaxy is just so perfect to me. We went from Mario 64, which is what you'd honestly expect from a standard 3D Mario game, since it's not too over the top, and then of course we got Sunshine, which is just a beach resort Mario 3D game. But after that, Mario ends up in freaking space, and when it comes to the space stuff, I always tend to gravitate towards it. Get the pun? Silly stuff aside, these games are honestly my favorite 3D Mario games. Mario Odyssey and 64 are very close though, but only because the movement in 64 and Odyssey are so fast paced and fun. But if we're talking about story wise and experience, I'm always picking the Mario Galaxy games. These were some of my favorite games growing up and still are some of my favorite games. And to be honest, I appreciate them more now that I'm older. These games really show how Nintendo makes timeless classics. Staying on the space and sci-fi theme, we have Metroid Prime Remastered. This was the first actual Metroid game I got into. I never really played much Metroid Metroid before this game because I just never heard too much about Metroid. When I tell you this game is a masterpiece, that's a severe understatement. I had a blast playing this game. Metroid has become one of my favorite game franchises of all time now from playing Metroid Prime. It breaks my heart that the Metroid Prime series just doesn't get that much attention because these games are fantastic. I was listening to the soundtrack of Metroid Prime while scripting the video and stumbled over a comment that explained Prime so well. I took a picture of it to show y'all, and this is a perfect explanation, and shout out to the person who wrote this comment. But I agree with it 100%. This game is such a vibe, and even though the backtracking can be annoying sometimes. And hey, I'll admit, I had to look up some walkthroughs even to get through the game sometimes, because these older games are a struggle to get through without some help sometimes. But I enjoyed the challenge. I definitely would push myself to the limit to try and figure out what to do without help. But I think after the release of Prime Remastered and Metroid Dread, people are really starting to show Metroid the love it deserves now. And if Prime 4 comes out on the release for the next Nintendo console, I believe it'll help it out even more. Metroid does deserve to be one of the top Nintendo characters of all time. Going back to the 3D Zelda games, we have Breath of the Wild. I was late to the Breath of the Wild hype, but once I played it, I wish I had played it a lot earlier. This game was such a vibe. Playing as Link in a post-apocalyptic Hyrule was the best thing ever. Exploring the vast land was insanely fun and not as boring as you would think wandering a big open world. This change of the 3D Zelda franchise was a very fun idea. The only complaint I have that a lot of other people have are the weapons breaking, but other than that, this game is for sure a 10 out of 10 for me. I've been over 50 hours playing this, trying to figure out every puzzle and gimmick, but those 50 hours were some of the best I've experienced in gaming, and I would love to relive playing Breath of the Wild for the first time again. We have another platformer, and it's Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. This is one of my favorite platformers of all time. I've been a huge fan of the Donkey Kong Country franchise. They've always been some of my favorite games of all time, and this one is by far the best in my opinion. From the music, characters, and gameplay, this game is deserving of a 10 out of 10. This game is also very difficult, which makes it a challenge to beat, which I don't mind. Donkey Kong has always been one of the more challenging platformers, but I just wish Nintendo would make more Donkey Kong games, because it seems like all they ever want to do is port his games to the Switch. Demon's Souls Remastered is one of my favorite action-adventure games of all time. Whenever I first got my PlayStation 5, around the beginning of its lifespan, this game and Spider-Man and Miles Morales were the only games I had, but I had never played a Souls game before this game, and I absolutely fell in love with this series. The game looked absolutely beautiful, and the gameplay was so much fun and challenging. I still haven't played any other Soul games though, because I just don't have money like that to play the games I want to, but trust me, whenever I get some money, I'm getting more of the Souls games. Demon's Souls took me forever to beat, and I had to do a lot of recreating characters because of mistakes I made, but this game was so incredible, and from what I've heard, the other Soul games are good and even better, I've heard. The last game I'm going to talk about is SpiderMan II. I played this game for the first time around the springtime. It was one of the best game experiences I've had. The story was amazing and always had me wondering what would happen next, and the villains they chose to include were just absolutely perfect. Venom, Reptile, and Kraven, along with the others. This was by far my favorite out of any of the other games in the trilogy. The others aren't really close to this one in my opinion. This was the first time I've ever grinded for a platinum trophy as well. Well, those are all the games that I think are 10 out of 10s. Tell me in the comments what games y'all have played that y'all think are 10 out of 10s. There are some great games I still haven't played though, which I think could be on this list, like the Last of Us games, Elden Ring, and some of the other ones I can't think of right now. I might end up making a part 2 again eventually if I end up playing more games that I think are deserving of 10 out of 10 titles. But I hope y'all enjoyed the video. I'm gonna start making longer videos and once a week, so hopefully the wait time is a lot more worth it. With all that being said, peace out.